was a dreary evening in the Tolarian Community College. I just received the full preview for Markovs at Karlov Manor, and my head was spinning with all sorts of possibilities for which of these cards I could put in my commander deck. There was a new sacrifice payoff in town, but in a city like this, folks that profit off of foul play are a dime a dozen. Some new faces too, or new spins on old faces. I could hardly tell them apart anymore. It wasn't adding up. I needed something fresh, something new. I was just about ready to call it quits when in walks a list of the most exciting cards I'd seen in a hot minute. Sure, it was a commander list, but it was built like a modern one. Oh baby, it was time to get to work. Hey, who said that? Is someone there? Hello? Me, I'm just your inner monologue. I narrate your life and tell you what commander decks to build. You bastard! Show yourself, coward! You have a lot to answer for! Uh-oh, cheese it! Well, anyway, the creepy voice in my head who builds my commander decks was right. Markovs at Karlov Manor does have a lot of awesome designs, and I'm excited to put a ton of these new cards into my commander decks. This video will cover the top 5 best new commander cards from the set, as well as one honorable mention. Honestly, this set might as well be called Commander Legends 3, or more accurately, Commander Legends 2, given how chock full of fantastic new card designs for the Commander format it is. Because of this, I've had to be far more cutthroat than normal in assembling this list. As usual, this list will not include legendary creatures. That's a subject for another video. We'll be focusing instead on cards for the 99, but that's not the only criteria this time around. I'm not going to list any of the genetically strong big creatures that are in this set, though there are several. Vein Ripper, also known as Big Blood Artist, is going to be fantastic in Commander, but there's no reason to spend a whole section of the video talking about it because everyone knows that a Big Blood Artist with Ward is going to be good. Likewise, Incinerator of the Guilty is a repeatable flying one-sided board wipe on a stick. It's a great card for red commander decks. So instead, the cards on this list are going to be either totally unique or such a massive upgrade over an existing commander staple that they stand out above all the other good commander cards from Markovs at Karlov Manor. Finally, I'm not going to talk about any of the cards I discussed in my top new cards for Pioneer video, even though many of the cards in that video, if not all of them, are excellent for commander. If you want to hear how they combo, what they combo with, and the other reasons why these picks are so good for Pioneer or Commander, you'll just have to go over and watch that video. So with those restrictions in mind, let's investigate the top new cards from Markovs at Karlov Manor for Commander. Okay, right off the bat, we have a whopping 10 cards for the honorable mention slot, the Surveil Lands. These are tap lands that are similar to the Temples, but surveil instead of scry. More importantly, they also have basic land types, which means they are fetchable and can be grabbed with cards like Nature's Lore and Scholar of New Horizons. They also count toward any card that cares about having a specific basic land type in play. To be clear, these lands are not better than shock lands, and are probably even a bit worse than the Tango lands as well. That's right, I'm still calling them Tango lands. We call them Tango lands because it takes 2 to tango. I will die on this hill. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, the Surveil Lands. The Surveil Lands are roughly as good as the Bicycle Lands from Amonkhet, which are strong budget options for players that want additional fetchable lands without shelling out the cash for a true dual land. Or I suppose a Dominaria United land and a Sharpie. Look at that, good old Sharpie. But what's most exciting about the Surveil Lands is that they provide additional cheaper typed dual lands for enemy color pairs. Tango lands and Bicycle lands are awesome, but they're restricted to ally color pairs. Before MKM, yes, that's what I'm calling it because YouTube knows the words I say, and while it doesn't have a problem with the words Karlov or Manor, it has a problem with the first one. If you wanted to build a Golgari deck and you wanted additional duels to fetch off of your fetch lands, or Nature's Lore effects when you already had an overgrown tomb in play, you either had to buy, or proxy, a Bayou, or settle for a typed guild gate. Bleg. But now with MKM, you can go find an underground mortuary and get a little surveil action on top of your dual land. Wizards of the Coast certainly knocked it out of the park with this cycle of Surveil Lands. Perfect for just about any commander deck. And you know what else is perfect for any commander deck? Signets. This would be really cool if I had had rings on my fingers for that. And right now, you can get a signed signet by me, the professor, when you support Tolarian Community College on Patreon. For the month of January and February, all new patrons will receive one random signet signed by me, the professor, when you support at the signed card level. These can be signets from the original Ravnica to Ravnica Remastered to any art or style in between. I'm gonna pick one out at random from my collection, sign it, and send it to you as my way of saying thanks for supporting me on Patreon. I might even send a foil signet or an arcane signet. So many signets. So if you do appreciate this channel, sign up at www.patreon.com/Tolarian Community College and help keep this channel going and growing strong, and get a random signet signed by me as my way of saying thank you. Now let's hit the proper top 5 best new cards for Commander from Markov Manor. Number 5 on our list is the Case of the Locked Hothouse. This is a new enchantment subtype called Case. These cases are a bit confusing to parse at first glance, but once you get used to the templating, they actually are fairly simple. 4 mana for an exploration isn't a great deal on its own, but an exploration that lets you play lands from the top of your deck is essentially an Oracle of Moldiah, a classic card and a fantastic addition to any land's deck. But the Case of the Locked Hothouse is even better than Oracle once it is solved, because you also get to cast creatures and enchantments from the top of your library. In most green decks, this means you can play almost any card from the top of your library, as green decks don't usually have a ton of instant sorceries, planeswalkers, or artifacts. And because you can still play an additional land each turn, you're even mitigated from a common issue with future sight effects, hitting a land pocket of a couple lands in a row that prevents you from getting full value out of your future sight. Keep in mind that just as with Oracle of Moldiah, future sight effects like Case of the Locked Hothouse get better if you have a way to manipulate the top of your library, such as with a fetch land. Case of the Locked Hothouse is perfectly templated to be turned on by the end step of your next turn without doing anything special on your part. All you have to do is make sure you play enough lands in your deck that you get full use out of your case. Here's how the case plays out in the simplest scenarios. Play your 4th land and cast this case. Then play an additional land, your 5th. On your next turn, play 2 lands, your 6th and your 7th. Move to your end step and voila, you solved the case. Heck, if you have a Yiva, Nature's Herald, in play, you can even start casting creatures from the top of your deck right away. Alright, so we all know about Rite of Replication, but what happens if you take Rite of Replication and make it even more in line with Simic nonsense? Enter Doppel Gang, the number 4 card on our list. Doppel Gang is a sorcery with a wild mana cost. Triple X, green and a blue. But despite the triple X in its mana cost, and the fact that the card's called Doppel Gang, don't worry, this card is G-rated. But maybe it shouldn't be, given how absolutely filthy the card can get if you have the mana to pump into it. Doppel Gang's line of text is sort of the opposite of Case of the Locked Hothouse, in that it reads more simply than it plays out in practice. For each of X target permanents, create X tokens that are copies of them. That's X copies of X permanents. If you pay X equaling 3 times, you get 9 total new permanents. If you pay X equaling 4 3 times, that's 16 total new permanents. With an arbitrarily large number of mana thanks to an infinite combo, you can flood the board with a number of permanents equal to the current number of permanents in play squared. See? Simic nonsense through and through. So let's say you want to copy your opponent's Massacre Worm. You have 5 mana. Easy, simple. Spend X, or 1 generic mana, 3 times, then pay green and a blue. Congratulations, you've made yourself a Massacre Worm. But let's say you want to copy Massacre Worm and Massacre Girl. Well, you'll have to pay X equals 2 3 times, and then pay green and a blue for a total of 8 mana. Once you do that, you don't have yourself just a Massacre Worm and a Massacre Girl. You have 2 Massacre Worms and 2 Massacre Girls. You'll have to Legend Rule one of your Massacre Girls, and then you'll put 4 of these triggers on the stack. This is obviously a very specific scenario, but it's worth keeping in mind that you can legally target legendary permanents with Doppel Gang and get their enter the battlefield triggers when they enter play. And keep in mind you can copy lands with this card as well. Doppel Gang is going to be a headache to resolve once you make a lot of mana, which, let's be honest, Simic is kind of very extremely good at doing. So get ready to triple X a Doppel Gang during your next extremely very friendly family G-rated game night. Number 3 on the list is the only creature that meets the criteria laid out at the start of the video. And that card is Forensic Gadgeteer, a 3-mana, 2/3 Vidalcan Artificer Detective. What a type line. And this card is just begging to be included in your artifact deck. The Gadgeteer's first ability is, whenever you cast an artifact spell, investigate. Its second ability reads, activated abilities of artifacts you control cost 1 generic mana less to activate. This effect can't reduce the mana in that cost to less than 1 mana. So let's address the monolith in the room. This does indeed go infinite with Basalt Monolith. So add it to the list of cards that break Basalt Monolith. But even outside of its utility as a combo piece, Forensic Gadgeteer is a freaking fantastic card. Investigating every time you cast an artifact spell means, just like Sai, Master Thopterist, you get 2 artifacts in play for the price of 1 every time you cast it. And because he reduces the cost of artifacts' activated abilities, you can easily pour any additional mana you have into your clues to draw new cards, since they only cost 1 now. I have a hard time imagining a blue-based artifact deck that doesn't want Forensic Gadgeteer. 3 mana is a modest investment for a card that generates this much value. The clue tokens the Gadgeteer generates can be tapped for mana with Urza, tapped for improvise or apply a discount to affinity spells, or even turned into whatever your scariest token is with Brutaclad. The Gadgeteer's mana discount for activated abilities isn't as useful as the discount offered by Zirda, sure, but it's still nothing to sneeze at. And of course it goes infinite with Basalt Monolith, but it also discounts other artifacts like Isokron Scepter, Lithoform Engine, and Walking Ballista. Of course, clue tokens are going to be the most common discount you use, but keep an eye out for other artifacts on the battlefield that benefit from this guy's static ability. Forensic Gadgeteer is a banger and should make its way into the 99 of just about any artifact deck you run. So what is the second best new card for Commander for the 99 from this set? Well, Vandal Blast, the creme de la creme of artifact removal in Commander. For 5 mana, every artifact you don't control just vanishes into the wind, or maybe gets absolutely obliterated in a trash compactor. That seems more red. But imagine, if you will, a card better than Vandal Blast. What could such a card even do? Put a creature into play from the top few cards of your deck? Pah! That would never work. Or would it? Because what's this? Anzrag's Rampage? 3 and double red for a sorcery that reads, destroy each artifact you don't control, then exile the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts put into graveyards from the battlefield this turn. You may put a creature card exiled this way into play. It gains haste. Then you put it into your hand at the beginning of the end step. Okay. Well, at least that's fair. Wait, this has the same mana value as an overloaded Vandal Blast? So it's strictly better Vandal Blast. What? That's right. Anzrag's Rampage is Vandal Blast on steroids. The kind of steroids that turn you into a giant mole god. What a card. Vandal Blast is already great, but Vandal Blast with this much upside is just, it's unreal. Basically, every red deck that currently plays Vandal Blast should play this card, provided you have some high impact creatures to find off of it. Because here's the rub with Anzrag's Rampage. You exile the cards no matter what, even if you don't find a creature to put into play. The cards also don't get shuffled back into your library afterward. They're exiled for good. So be careful casting this card if you have any cards in your deck that would hose you if they got exiled. Cards like a Crucial Win Condition, for example, or some synergy piece you try to find every game. But that said, if your synergy piece is a creature, then by all means you should run this card in your deck. You only get 1 attack with the creature you find before it returns to your hand, but for some cards that's enough. What if it's an Ancient Copper Dragon, or an Ancient Silver Dragon, or even an Ancient Craterhoof Behemoth Dragon? The original Ancient Dragon. I just love Anzrag's Rampage, a one-sided artifact wipe that draws you the best creature from the top few cards of your library would be cool as is, but the fact that you get to attack with that creature once for free and get all its enter the battlefield effects is just absurd. I simply cannot wait to see the look on my opponent's faces when I cast this card in my next Commander game. But we still need to talk number 1, and what is the number 1 best new Commander card for the 99? Oh my goodness, it's... Transition. Why didn't you transition? Transition! Coming in at number 1, it's Reenact the Crime. An instant for 1 generic and 3 blue mana. You just know a card is gonna be strong when it has a mana cost that restrictive. Reenact the Crime reads, exile target non-land card in a graveyard that was put there from anywhere this turn. Copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Again, this is an instant. Discard a Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, then with the shuffle trigger on the stack, cast Reenact the Crime. Or discard a Portal to Phyrexia and cast Reenact the Crime. Or discard Omniscience and cast Reenact the Crime. Then once Omniscience is in play, you can just cast Portal to Phyrexia and Kozilek, Butcher of Truth for free. Tell me your imagination is not running wild right now. Reenact the Crime is at its best in decks that are good at discarding cards for low mana investment. Cards like Faithless Looting or Frantic Search. Or 0 mana discard outlets like Duretti, Scrap Savant are the best enablers for Reenact the Crime. But you can also cast this card after a removal spell or counter spell on an opponent's big scary creature or spell. Remember, this says any non-land card. You can cast an instant or sorcery with this card too. Peer into the Abyss, Seagate Restoration, Rise of the Dark Realms. You can cast a Bolas's Citadel or a Great Henge. The possibilities are as endless as your imagination, and of course the Commander legal card pool, which is quite big. This card is even tutorable with Merchant Scroll. It's recastable with Torrential Gearhulk. It's copyable with any number of cards that copy instants and sorceries. You can target a card you discard, yes, but you can also mill over a card with Emery and cast this, or Brain Freeze an opponent and cast the best spell you hit off of it. You can even use it to save your own card if your opponent destroys it, casting a copy of the card to table-wide groans from your opponents. This is a card you are going to have to think about anytime you play against a blue player. If you're destroying a permanent or discarding something big for any reason, and your opponent has 1 and triple blue available, you might be setting yourself up for a blowout. Reenact the Crime is not an upgrade on an existing card. It's a card that's unlike any we've ever seen. The card is capital G good, but it's in blue, not green. So if you're a blue player who loves committing crimes at the Commander table, so in other words, a blue player in Commander, then you absolutely must get your hands on a copy of Reenact the Crime. There you have it, my picks for the best new Commander cards from Markovs at Karlov Manor, but as I said at the top, there are a ton of heaters in this set. So now I want to hear from you. What cards are you excited to snatch up for your Commander deck? Also, make sure to check out our top new cards for Pioneer from this set, because that's a video that goes over cards that are good in Commander and even has some rad combos that you might want to check out. So if you haven't watched that just because you don't play Pioneer, you still might want to give it a view. And remember, all new patrons at the signed card level are receiving a random signet signed by me, the Professor, just for helping support us on Patreon. This is a random signet from my collection from just about any set, some in foil, some arcane, some original, and some remastered, but you will get a signed one from me to you as my way of saying thanks. So if you are interested in a signed card, just go to www.patreon.com/Tolarian Community College. You'll not only be getting that great thank you gift, but helping support this channel when you do.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
Unknown Commander. Gavin, I don't know what this is. This is your event?
So I design about 60 or so playtest cards for each one of these people have never seen before.
What makes a card a playtest card?
They look like this.
Hi everybody, I'm Rachel Weeks. I'm playing the Colossal Dreadmaw.
Hi, my name is George. I am going to be playing Polis, the Planeshifter.
I want to have the honor of playing the first playtest card of the game.
All right.
Wow,
And it's
so fast.
Command Power Plants.
What is that?
Frost gonna love this one.
Oh no. So George,
Okay.
look at my thing and I want to
Bah.
attack you. I'm not scared of the roaming.
Oh, you
Why
should
not?
No,
You should be.
Okay.
I choose a plane at random.
All right.
There is Immerstorm.
You have 7 floating green mana from
Yeah,
that?
and you know what I'm gonna do with it, bro?
I'm gonna cast a Colossal
Cast a
Dreadmore.
Foundation Breaker.
Wow.
I mean, a Colossal Dreadmaw.
I'll say that there's not a lot of balance and rigor put into these unknown playtest cards.
Okay, there's no tutors.